All right, hey folks, we are going to continue working on art for the upcoming supplement, Spelljammer Combat and Exploration. So, got my microphone sidekick here, Doodle. What's up, buddy? And we're going to let me check my signal here. I'll go through my intro spiel, and then we'll get to work. So, mic check, mic check. 1, 2, 3. Am I coming through? 1, 2, 3. Yep, sounds like I am. Good. I'm going to press a bunch of buttons across the internet here while I attempt to distract you with my intro. So let's get to that. Hey, my name is Phil Kearney. I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. I've been focusing my attention on Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition since the release of Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, which I think came out in 2017. There you go. So that was a Magic the Gathering setting that Wizards of the Coast published. Wizards currently owns both D&D and Magic the Gathering, so they created a crossover setting, but they didn't include any color mana, so that inspired me to get into 5e design. There's a link down below to the 5 color mana spell point variant rules that I created that replaces both spell casting and spell slots and replaces it with the color mana system from the card game Magic the Gathering. You can check that stuff out if you're interested. Otherwise, let's see. I have just posted that live on Twitter. If you're on the Twitter X platform and still, I am at Phil Kearney. You can follow me there to get updates when I go live. Best way, another great way to support the channel is like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications when I am live in the future. Here's a full playlist of everything. God, we've already picked up more people since yesterday. Thanks a lot, folks, for being involved and interested in what we do. That's awesome. Full playlist here. This book cover I created back at episode 15, so you can jump into the Wayback Machine and past 300 some odd episodes to check that out. So what I say, I create role-playing games, I illustrate them, and I publish them online. So I run campaigns from level 1 to 20. When I have an idea for a campaign, but the tools don't exist to run that game in 5e, I build them, and if they're cool enough, I'll publish them. So here is all the results of the playtesting that we had done. We break down the document into bite-sized ideas. We get an editor to help us chew through it. Once we have a manuscript in place, we break those ideas up onto the pages. Here's an example of where we are at currently inside the Creature Menagerie, where we're taking creatures from Spelljammer that are 50 feet or large, basically 50 feet or larger in size, kaiju-sized creatures, and providing some quick mechanics for how to use them in the spelljamming system, where ships are 50 and 500 feet in size as well. You need big creatures if you got big people. So you can see here we import the page from the Word. I use Microsoft Word. So we import the page from Word into Photoshop. We then add pictures to it. Once all the pictures are done, we can seal the document together. We'll hyperlink everything, table of contents, seal it into a PDF. Here's some illustrations you can see that we've done previously, how these things just slide into place where the text goes. That's how you build a document, with the transparent boxes where you can position things precisely like that, and then we just slide it all together and just make sure that the text lines up. So super easy, barely an inconvenience. So this is where we're at today. We'll seal this up into a PDF and then put it on DMsGuild when it's done. There's other stuff down below you can check out as well if you want to support me and the channel. I also have a Patreon. I also have a Discord channel where we're going to be playtesting the Martial Power System. I haven't streamed the Martial Power System in a bit. Maybe I'll do that on Saturday. So we are building out background stuff. Like here we had, you know what? The more I look at this, the less I like how that does. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to get rid of that. TBH. I stream 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. I make a video on Saturday and then publish it on Sunday. Spelljammer is my jam right now. Ha, pardon the pun. So I've been, all the videos that I've been creating are pertinent to either this book that we're making or ideas and inspiration from this book that will eventually become additional books. Because when I make a book, it inspires more books. I make books so I can make more books, and then I build a theme. Like, here, I'll tangent real quick and brag about my own shit real fast here. So if we're looking at the 5-color mana spell point variant rules right here on the DMs Guild, it's a bundle of books. It started with the core mechanics where we were just converting spellcasting in general to the color mana system. But then we created, we also have Knights and Tricksters, which is specifically Arcane Tricksters and Eldritch Knights, and using the color mana system. That then inspired Spell Point Warlocks to get rid of the Pact Magic system and the Mystic Arcanum system, build a unified spell point system for them that could also be used with color mana. Now that we're playing around with different magic paradigms, we created Tap on Tap Burn, the Elemental Key book, which has both color magic as well as the 4 elements as an alternate paradigm. So we now have a 5-color magic system, and we also have a 4 elemental system, which is perfect if you are into Avatar: The Last Airbender. You can take your magic system. Once Martial Powers gets released, you can play Airbender or Earthbender or any kind of elemental bender with any martial class that you want, as a separate unique power system from what actual spellcasting is in D&D as well. And then since we were diving down into that inspired the revised color mana spell list, where we expanded on the versatility and acquisition of spells using the color mana system. So this is all going to go through a massive revision when the 2024 books get released, because there's going to be new tech in those books, which allows us an opportunity to glam up all of those. I've advanced a lot in my design abilities since the release of those books, so there's a great opportunity for me to just lean into my own stuff and make for betters. So, but let's go ahead and lock this down again. Here's the pages that we were doing yesterday, and I'm pretty happy with that. I like the little corner markup, so I'll probably be doing more of that as I start dropping images into the book. I'll probably take like 30 minutes or something and build little twibbles in the middle and in the corners like that where there's space to do it. So let's just dive into this. This is how we do. Just gonna blend this all together here. It's nothing complicated. It's just I put the little background coloring to help ground these. This is all stock art or token art that I created for the supplement. That's going to be included in a zip file. There's between Light as Araxis, all the creatures, all the ships, and all the creatures, ships, and NPCs from Light as Araxis. There's probably about 80 tokens. Between all of those, there's going to be black and white and color versions, so it'll be easy for folks to print at their home table if they do, like if they want to use a laser printer or whatever. It's super easy. Or if they just want these tokens for like virtual tabletop, which is what I prefer. I like Roll20 myself. I've been using Roll20 for 11 years now, and so it's my space of choice when I'm DMing. It's not that I'm particularly proficient with it. I'm just familiar with it. Like I don't do like all the cool glam up stuff that you can do with these virtual tabletops, like lighting, like dynamic lighting and all that stuff. I just use it as a whiteboard, so I can sketch ideas. Here's my this is a piece of advice that I give frequently, but it's worth repeating. Regardless of the quality of maps that I as a content producer provides to the public to make use of, as a DM I use as little as possible. I like theater of the mind because it's fast, and when I make a map, I make it the worst bullshitty map of like possible. Like the more stick figure it can be, the better to me, because if your team, if you get your map quality down to a point where you can't tell if I prepared this ahead of time or just quickly sketched it, then you'll never know if I'm creating a dungeon on the fly or if it's a dungeon I prepared. So the team, if I'm just constantly just sketching out in the moment what it is that the team is messing around with, they will never know if I'm on script or off script. So it helps, in my opinion, it helps sustain the suspension of disbelief, because they aren't pulled out of immersion, because I'm moving from a planned color, fully strussed up map that's gorgeous, and then now I'm doing stick figures. It's like, are we off the radar, Phil? Did you prepare the rest of this adventure? It's like, no, I did not. It's obvious, isn't it? Because we went from 5-star to we went from steak to McDonald's. So you can tell the transition. But if you're always creating garbage visuals for your team, then they can never tell the difference. And I think I've probably beaten that point to death. Yeah. My words are really just garbage tier today, guys. I am just fuck off. Garbage. So do I want to create? I'm going to let's balance out the rest of this stuff first, and then we'll decide what's missing. So I was thinking about doing a color splash like here somewhere, like to create some variety there, but I don't actually know if it's necessary yet. So what I need to do is finish the work that I actually have here with the docket along these edges, and then pan out and look at the piece as a whole. And if there is anything that's missing, that's when we'll add it in. So we're just fucking around with color today. That's what we're doing. Merge. Up that opacity, or up the strength of that smudge, so I can work this stuff into the canvas a little bit easier. Yeah, the Boo's Menagerie doesn't really speak to whether or not creatures can fly fast in space or not. They kind of assume that lunar and solar dragons can fly at spelljamming speeds, but it never actually addresses it. Like, for example, in spoilers alert, because spoilers, Light of Xeraxis in the final battle. That's what I'm working on. So I do this stuff on screen with you guys here. You can see the artwork that I'm doing, but I also do stuff off screen. And I'm still hashing out the last 4 pages of the Light of Xeraxis conversion guide. Here, you can check this stuff out. We'll grab this. Where am I at? Here. Preview, guys. What the? Why did you pull back? Let's grab our bit here, and then bring it down. Bring it on down to here. So this is where we're at right now. Yeah, so I'm in the process of converting Part 4, Saviors of the Multiverse. We've got the intro into Space Invaders, but this is actually where I'm caught up. I've got 4 pages worth of mechanical concepts for the final battle, but it's too much. It's too bulky. I need to trim it down. So I'm going through the process of trimming that. But like, for example, in the once you get through the fleet, actually the way that works is that you got all these Xeraxian star moths that are trying to defend the temple, the Citadel of Light from the players coming in and stopping the astral elves from sapping their home world of its essence and destroying the world so that the Xeraxian Empire can survive. That's the premise of the adventure. And so when you attack the Citadel, it suggests that you start 1,000 feet apart, but these ships can only travel when you're the official rules of Spelljammer's Adventures in Space from the 2025 Wizards of the Coast. The official rules is that when you're within basically within a mile of anything significant in size, like a Citadel of Light, then your speed slows from 100 million miles per day down to 30 feet per round, essentially. And they suggest that you start 1,000 feet away from the Citadel. And then they also, so there's a fleet between you and the Citadel, and there's dragons just casually flying around the Citadel like they're bored. And then they notice, they literally say they notice the battle, so they decide to take interest in it. Like the dragons, like these ultra intelligent dragons wouldn't be like in the complete know of everything that's going on. They treat them like like crows circling a trash can, you know? It's like, no, these are fucking dragons, dude. Anyway, that's a mild complaint, but not the point of my adventure here in conversation. It's that when they take notice of the battle, they fly to join it, but it's 1,000 feet away, and dragons can fly like 100 feet per round. So at that speed, it takes 10 rounds for them to get to the characters to even start engaging in battle. And if you've been fighting for 10 rounds, the last thing you want is a dozen dragons showing up to slow shit down. It's like a 6-hour fight if you run all of the stuff that's in locks that's available for players to do before they get to the Citadel. It's too much, it's too long, it's too slow. And I question how much playtesting had gone into how they structured the stuff that's in there. So if it takes like if dragons can't fly faster than 100 feet per round and they don't have the ability to fly at spelljamming speeds, how the fuck are they ever supposed to leave the Citadel of Light to move on to another place? Kandori is the same way. They have basically a 40-foot speed, but there's no real mention of them being able to propel themselves through wild space at any speed faster than like 50 feet per round. So since it's not spelled out, that all these things that aren't spelled out are reasons why we're building this book in the first place. It's because we want to be able to provide sensible rules about how these things can navigate the campaign space that was provided in Wild Space and Astral Sea, and provide just some logical reasons how these creatures can traverse and how they can engage with mechanics that the players are using. So you know, we have things like a Kandori can travel up to 10 miles per day between worlds. A Kandori doesn't. Let's see. A Kandori 10 million. There you go. A Kandori can travel up to 10 million miles per day between worlds. A Kandori doesn't need air, or food, drink to survive, but do require light. As a bonus action, Kandori can take the disengage action. As a reaction, they can pace targets. So, 10 million miles. A spelljamming ship can travel 100 million miles per day. A fighter craft can travel 1 million miles per day. So the Kandori are in a comfortable space in between. That if you had a fighter craft like a sleigh, and then you hooked them up to Kandori, then you'd be flying 10 times faster than what your fighter craft could do on its own, but not as fast as a Spelljammer ship. While over here we're looking at a Lunar Dragon, which can travel 100 million miles per day. So dragons can easily hunt Kandori because they can outfly it. Anyway, but it isn't specifically spelled out. There's no incremental movement, which is something that we spent one of my Sunday videos was about incremental movement at large scales and addressing how that works. But yeah, Kandori are designed to fly around a light, like a central star, and just absorb the light there. They don't have any reason to migrate from one source of light to another, and in most instances there is only one source of light in a wild space system. And if they leave that wild space system in the Astral Sea, they could travel to another sphere system that would have another central source of light for them to eat. But why would they? It, like, everything that they ever need is around that central star. So that makes them pretty easy picking for predators that can fly as fast or faster than them. They're also massive, so so they're a good meal. So since the only thing that they need to grow is light, they're basically an infinite food source for anything else that's a carnivore. Anyway, I think I'm done rambling there. Speed is important. I'm not my most loquacious self today. You know what? I'm inspired to say this. I crap on other content producers that crap on Wizards of the Coast and then offer something that isn't D&D. Like, D&D's broken, play my role-playing game instead. You know? Like, that feels kind of insincere to me. Like, you can't sell your book on your own merits. You have to compare it to D&D. I get it. You're running a hustle, and I respect the hustle. I really do. The difference that we have going on here is that I trash Wizards of the Coast and then provide something that is Wizards of the Coast that just adds onto or resolves the problems that I have with it, like Descent into Avernus. There's a lot of things I don't like about Descent into Avernus. So I've play tested a different version of Descent into Avernus that does all the things that I want it to do. And when I get around to publishing that, it's going to be basically a companion guide to Descent. It doesn't replace Descent into Avernus. It leans into the things that are cool about Descent into Avernus, but you still are playing Descent into Avernus. I'm not saying DIA is stupid. You should play my Horde of the Demon Realm. It's a replacement for D&D and Descent into Avernus. Buy my book. This is like, you're playing Descent into Avernus and you want to add on to it. Here's something that adds to how fun Descent into Avernus is from the perspective of the kind of fun that I like to play. It's a subtle difference. The stuff that I do is an homage to the things that Wizards produces. It's not saying Wizards is stupid. You should play my thing instead. It's like you should play Wizards. Here's some tools that will make it more fun. Keep playing. I don't know. To me, it's an integrity thing. Like, you can't be punching up and then trying to make people not play at the same time. That just feels insincere. It feels like a salesman, Like, hate D&D, play my game instead. It's like, who the fuck are you? Like, didn't you just make like 10,000 hours worth of YouTube content about how to play D&D, and now you're saying that the game is no good? When did you form that opinion? Like, when it became popular to not like D&D? If that's when you changed your mind about D&D, I don't really have a lot of faith or respect for that decision. I don't know. You can not like D&D and go your own way, but go your own way. Stop pointing at D&D and saying it's bad and my stuff is better. So play my stuff instead. It's like, I personally think my stuff is better, but it's because I want you to play D&D. Anyway, it's maybe it's a dumb rant, and maybe the subtleties of that argument are being lost by the folks that are listening right now. So hey guys. We'll see. When I start doing my own Kickstarter projects, we'll see if I'm going to eat a lot of crow here and if I'm going to be hypocritical or not. So, if you want to find out if I'm a hypocrite or not, like and subscribe, hit the bell icon to get notifications, and meticulously listen to everything I always say from now on, and attempt to find the gotcha moments where you can catch me in my own inconsistencies and hypocrisy, and call me out in the most rude fashion that you can manage. Because you're worth it. Everyone should know how good you are at pointing out the inconsistencies of someone who has absolutely no impact on your life. I welcome your hate in the comments below. Boy, these things take time. Hours can seem like days under construction circumstances like this. Your Athacon fans out there. He's intelligent but inexperienced. Hey, what's up? There's some text happening over here. Polar, Bear, Bar, Bill. What's up, guys? Just happy someone is answering the questions I've had about Spelljammer for me, so that I can use my prep time to focus on other stuff. Fuck yeah, man! I'm happy this is hitting the button that you were trying to press. So, cheers! Thanks for taking interest. What's up, Bill's mom? Coco, I like the ideas that you dropped into the Discord. I've always been, so the idea of dead gods in the Astral Sea is something that's been around since first edition. It's been the default place. Like, what happens to gods when they die? They fall into the Astral Sea and they're forgotten forever, right? And so there's these the dead gods are derelicts that float through the nothing. There's actually, I think there was a second edition product. Hold on. D&D 2E Dead Gods. Dead Gods. They float through the astral plane, mammoth isles of rock adrift in an endless sea of silver. Once they were gods, now they are little more than debris, petrified husks of fading belief and forgotten prayers. Yet, for many, their memories linger. Their dreams live on, and for some, those dreams are terrifying nightmares of vengeance and conquest and death. Dead Gods is a 176-page adventure featuring 2 scenarios that can be played separately or linked together. In the first, the heroes are drawn into an epic quest, blah, 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 Dead Gods. So yeah, Dead Gods floating through the Astral Sea. Planescape had like 60 fucking books, man, like 4 box sets, like 60 books. God, it was such a hardcore setting, man. I loved Planescape, and Planescape came out not far behind Spelljammer, a couple of years, I think. And as soon as Planescape happened and they started diving into the planes, it was so obvious that Spelljammer could work in eternal eternal planes, like Tartarus. No, it's Acheron. Is the plane of giant iron 6-sided dice that are floating through nowhere that occasionally bump into each other, and so the Planescape, I believe they had a random table about like how large each D6 was, and like thousands of miles in size, and they would just drift through basically its own wild space system, occasionally colliding. And this is where all the orcs go when they die. So there have these wars on each side of a D6. Like you'd have a D6 here, right? And there'd be like 10,000 orcs fighting like 7,000 hobgoblins, and then another one would come along and clump. It would just destroy all of them. They were all gone, poof, just like that. In my ongoing campaign world, some planes in the Great Wheel just bleed into the astral space. Tartarus is one of them. Acheron is one of them, where you're in the astral sea and it just eventually fades into this coppery murkiness. And then you start seeing these D6s floating through space. And this is a place where orc shamans go when they die. And they can take these giant cubes of iron and build scorpion ships and war mammoths and all the spelljamming ships that supply the Skrull army. And they are gifts from their god Grumpsh to attack reality. So these Skrull elite pick up these dead orc spirits and their ships that they build out of the plane of Tartarus drift from Tartarus into the astral sea to hunt elves that are still alive that they can kill and drag to hell with them. Fucking fun. Pandemonium is all these tunnels of wind, and all the tunnels just dump out into the astral sea. So you can fly into them if you want to, but they constrict after a while, and the winds can tear through your ship, so they deal slashing damage over time. But you can access it. Limbo also, like Acheron, just pours directly into the astral sea. It's while you're floating through that space, eventually your ideas just start manifesting around you, and that's when you know you've accidentally fallen into the shore of Limbo. You can fly your ship directly into Limbo, and the bubble of space that you have around your ship is a protective space that prevents reality from just distorting your ship into a ham sandwich. But you could if you're a pilot, if you leave your ship untended by a pilot long enough, it will become a ham sandwich and you'll lose your ship. I could spend time talking about Limbo because it's there's a book series that I read that felt like Limbo to me that I'll probably end up talking about at some point. What was another one? Those are the only three I know that I've ever dealt with. I think there's another plane that naturally just pours into the astral, but I can't recall what it is offhand right now. But that's a really, like, you can push these, but none of those places have any easy access out of them. Like, you can get into these planes and fuck around forever. That's cool. Mechanus, because it's just a bunch of gears that are just free floating through reality. That just builds the system clockwork that's just hanging in the nether. So that also pours into the astral. But Modrons aren't particularly motivated to go out into the astral sea and change reality unless they're on their Modron march, right? You can have crusades from the Modrons that occasionally pour into the astral sea to try to impose their will on the rest of reality. But I think the Skrull, the orc army, is the most aggressive and capable of engaging reality as a whole. And then we talk about color pools here in the book. Like, most of the time, color pools aren't big enough for vessels, but can potentially be large enough for a fighter craft to squeeze through. So when there's a color pool that is large enough for you to traverse ships through, that becomes like a massive point of combat. Like if there's if like the 723rd plane of the abyss has a color pool large enough to push a 500-foot ship through, then the legions of angels from heaven are sieging that door. And if any demon comes through it, they just get shredded with 1 billion points of radiant damage. So it's kind of locked down, but it becomes like a Cold War Berlin Iron Wall sort of effect, where the angels won't let the demons out, but the demons are constantly trying to sneak through anyway to push out into reality, which is why demons don't flood reality through the astral sea, because there are there's blockades of angels that prevent it from happening. Anyway, those are some ideas. Text, what's up? You know why these creatures traverse the wild space? My mind jumped to whale hunting. Yes, some strange and harvestable sources. Absolutely. fantasy space oil. If you, yeah, absolutely. You could, if you're a phlogiston kind of guy. I'm not a phlogiston guy, but a lot of people like the idea of phlogiston and the like lamp oil in a Kindori's head that makes her eyes light up and make them addicted to light. That could be phlogiston that actually floats inside of their brain. That's a thing that could happen. Yeah, they don't go into the ecology of Kindori very much, or like why would you find one free floating away from the sun? The only thing that really makes sense to me is that when they birth their young, for some reason, they can't be in the light. So families of whales would drift away from the source of light so they could birth their child and then bring the child back into the light. Some symbolism there. But I've never really fleshed it out because it's something I've never really had to address directly. But that would be, like, why would you find a Kindori anywhere other than around a sun? Probably because that's the only reason I could think of. If everything that you need is in close proximity and orbit around a sun, then there has to be an ecological reason why they would ever leave that sun. And birthing, they feed off the sun, so that doesn't make any sense. The suns are dangerous, so a lot of creatures don't come close to them. That's the only thing that really makes sense to me. I don't know. There might be a better solution. If there is, I'm open to it. Of course I'm open to it. I'm already spending more time in this corner than I wanted to. But ain't that just Hollywood? Oy vey, 1,000 years of art. There we go, that's starting to work. Normally I'm really good about pushing from the border into the piece. For some reason I've been failing that this morning. Luckily, we're only in our, first 20 minutes? Is that where we're at? Oh, Jesus, I've been at this for a half hour? Okay. There. Easy peasy. It's raining again here in Seattle. Big fucking surprise, right? Actually, during the summertime, it rarely rains at all. Thank you, Timely Timer. What is going wrong with this? Select. I want to filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Thank you. There. real trick is going to be when we drop this into the actual document to make sure these things properly line up. Fun. All right, and now let's finish off down here with the Megapede. What's up, buddy? Second verse, third verse, as the first. Started watching The Magicians again on Netflix. That was originally a sci-fi show back when sci-fi made TV shows. I don't know if sci-fi... I don't even know if sci-fi fucking exists anymore, to be honest. I remember seeing commercials for that way back in the day, and I was like, oh, that looks dumb and boring. But it turns out that's a really great show. I've watched the entire series. I think this is the fourth time I've seen this seen the series. It's got some fun heist stuff. It does some cool time travel things. I'm a big time travel junkie. Fix my chair. Oh, here we go. Yep, The Magicians. If you haven't seen it, it's totally worth your time. Probably one of sci-fi's best shows. That and Farscape, I think, were probably the best two shows that came out of sci-fi. The Invisible Man was actually a really good show too, but it didn't last long enough to really come to fruition. That's how that happened. I see it now. No. Thank you. Just like that. Thank you. See, I'm doing a much better job fading stuff in this time. I mean, well, maybe not. So I had my meet with my home table yesterday, and I updated them on the different progression, the new progress that we made from Tuesday's lunch stream on building the Spelljammer campaign. They're loving the premise. They pointed out to me something called was it Deep Rock Galactic? It was a 2022 PlayStation game about basically space dwarves fighting monsters inside of asteroids. Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. They pointed that out, and I watched the trailer. I'm like, yeah, that's a vibe that I'm looking for. They're like, we're totally in. So that's fantastic. I showed them the world map, like the system map, and the different factions of significant power. And they're immediately glomming onto Sarlona, the Dreamers, the Kalishtar, and the Inspired, having left the planets and basically making their society in space completely floating among the psionic crystals that resonate with psychic power that they use to summon their the quarry. They have much closer, more powerful alignment with the quarry while they're in orbit with the crystals directly. And so they're immediately like, yeah, that sounds super cool. We want to go fuck with that. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. I didn't because that's not where I was planning. I was planning on putting their plot of land between Droam and the Enel Elves, and then catty corner from that would be Sarlona, and across from that would be, oh Jesus, I can just show you guys. Workbench. Okay, so I gave them a position here, here, and here, And here's the elves, they're friendly. Here's Droam, they're not friendly. And here's Sarlona across the way. And they're immediately like, yeah, we want to go fuck with these guys. I'm like, all right. So I guess so I'm going to have to ask them, do you guys want to be positioned here or do you want to be positioned here? Over here is Dargoon. Over here is Droam. Both of them are bad news. The way that I had built it was Sarlona's territory is completely separated from the actual low orbit of Eberron, while Dargoon has connection, the Arenal elves have connection, and Droam has a minor connection, but Sarlona has completely divorced themselves from the planet. They have this is a 10,000. Each of these squares is 10,000 miles, and we're maxing the speed of Spelljammer ships in this campaign to be 10,000 miles per day. So it takes 1 day to move 1 square, which makes for a really easy hex crawl campaign inside this environment. But that's about 500 miles per hour. If 10,000 miles per day is 500 miles per hour. The speed of a normal airline flight, like if you go fly Alaska Air or like TWA or something, whatever. That is how fast a jet plane, commercial jet travel is 500 miles per hour. But the airships on the actual Eberron setting, the published stuff, they go about 50 miles per hour. So Spelljammer ships can fly 10 times the speed of airships. So with everything being so close in orbit, that makes it for a viable system. You don't need ships to fly 100 million miles per day if the maximum distance that you expect them to go in the campaign is 100,000 miles. Everything that they need to do in the entire campaign from level 1 to 20 is within 100,000 miles of Eberron. So I don't need them to have ships that go 100 million miles per day. If I was going from system to system across the Astral Sea, sure, maybe, why not? But you have to scale your campaign and customize the mechanics that you're using to curve into the narrative of what you want to play. If you want people to have to take days to hex crawl around this space fucking with stuff, then don't allow them the ability to do it in 10 minutes. Duh. So you have the ability to build any way. You can build your D&D game. You can customize and bend 5e to do whatever you want it to do to facilitate the story that you want to tell. For example, if you don't want people coming back from the dead, don't allow revivication. Don't allow raised dead. That sounds like a taboo sort of thing to do to restrict players and what they can do, but if you're going for a specific feel in your game, lean into it. Make it part of the challenge of playing that game to have these limits. Like the last campaign that my team ran, everyone was human. So they were, and half the campaign was underground. So they were constantly fucking with light sources. It was important for them to be able to sustain those things. Like they all had the ability to cast light type spells, but all the spells they needed either required a ritual or required concentration. It's just the restrictions that we placed on the campaign to lean into the aesthetics that I wanted the campaign to feel like. I've been DMing for 30 plus years at this point, so I have a lot of experience that I know how I can manipulate the rules to create the results that I want, because I've been tinkering with the rules this way since first edition to customize campaigns into like what narrative do you need. So it's very familiar to me to say you can do X, Y, and Z. You don't have access to A, B, and C. Like these are the limits of the campaign, and you'll if you get into it, you'll appreciate it. Because what I promise as a DM is I'll stick around for 20 levels, and I'll have enough content that I will push you through those entire. I will challenge you those entire 20 levels. You won't get bored, and you have to abide by the limitations I place on the campaign, so that I can keep showing up and make this campaign work the way that I want it to. So, like, what's in the player's handbook is a list of things that can be in your 5e game. It's not something that has to be in every 5e game. It's also not the scope of what can be. Obviously, third-party content creators prove this every day. that you could have so much more than what's in the player's handbook, like what's in the core books. Like you don't have to just use what WotC uses. They have their own agenda of stuff that they're trying to promote and products that they're trying to sell. So they're making adventures that curve into the stuff that they want to sell. And you can like use that stuff or not, depending on what you want to run. Like plane shift, like a Descent into Avernus campaign that allows plane shifting, there's not much of a hostile threat there. You really have to really want to be in Avernus if you can leave at any time. It's like not having planar magic while you're playing Descent into Avernus is a good idea. So you want to think about what spell, like you want to limit your spells. What do you have access to? You want to limit your races. What do you have access to? Like in Strixhaven, you aren't typically going to be playing Theros characters unless your DM wants Theros to get education from Strixhaven. So, like, you can place these limitations on your game, and you should consider it. Like, what is going to make my game? What do I need to add to make my game good? What do I need to get rid of to make my game good? These are both incredibly important questions when you're building a campaign. So, like, I know the parameters of my new table. I've got up to 6 players, but probably will normally have 5. And we only have an hour per week to play our game. So the combat system can't be 5e. I cannot use 5e because there's too much action economy, and it takes too long for a single character a single player to resolve a round of combat. Never mind 5 inside of an hour. It's too much. So I've been using what's basically been 4e action economy. Somewhere between like 1e and 4e action economy for the last campaign that I ran. And like I was saying on Tuesday, I may very well just use Shadow Dark rules when they're delving asteroids, because it's really like it has the 1 hour torches and we have a 1 hour lunch. That's pretty convenient, and it's fast, quick, deadly combat, which emphasizes the platoon guild style of campaign that I want to run, where the individual character, like the people in the guild, aren't nearly as important as what the guild is trying to accomplish as a whole, as a larger entity in a global campaign, where they can, it's Spelljammer, they can fly around planets in a couple of days. So it's it scales differently, and I don't have a 4-hour session. I have a 1-hour session, so I have to build the campaign to meet the parameters that the rules of engagement that we actually have for the campaign. We don't have the luxury of having a 7-hour game, because this is a lunch break activity that we participate in for us to unwind from our day job. It's just I keep accumulating people that are interested in the game. It's like, what are you guys doing? Playing D&D. But the last campaign, because we only play 1 hour a day, the last 1 to 20 campaign took 5 years to finish. God damn. But in the end, it ended up being 220 hours. So it was the same duration of a normal campaign, but it was parsed out over 1 hour a day for 5 years. So that was crazy, but it was fat, because normally I've only ran 2 other 1 to 20 campaigns in 5e, and both of those were in 4-hour weekend formats. But both of them clipped in around 200 some odd hours. So on average, it's about 10 hours per level. So this last campaign, it was a time travel campaign. It was Groundhog's Day. Every time they died, they'd wake up drunk and hungover at the same bar every morning. And they had to attack the day the world was ending. There was apocalypse. Gods were destroying the world, and the players got caught up in it. At level 1, they got approached by a druidic society that was aware of the impending doom of the apocalypse, and they had a prophecy that show up at this time. There's going to be people there that can help you, and those people were the players, of course. So like, yeah, we have this prophecy for you to help us. Are you willing to? And they're like, they have no idea what's going on. They literally have no idea that the world is ending today. They found out. They jumped onto. They said yes, and it was getting close to dark. But they'd actually only been adventuring for 3 days. So the first 3 sessions of the game was them in one day going around the town, finding out things about people, doing first level yippy dippy shit like, you know, my cat's caught in a tree. I need it down. Let's do an ability check to climb the tree and rescue the cat. That kind of stupid shit. And then this shamanic organization walks up to them and is like, we need your help. Something's wrong with the world, and we were told that you'd be able to help us. Are you willing to? I mean, it wasn't literally like that, but I'm just doing the abridged version for you. They said yes, and the shaman bapped them on the forehead with a magic button, and then they woke up back at the bar again. And they had no idea what the problem was. They didn't get any information from the shamans. They're like, yeah, we need your help. Will you? And they're like, yes. It's like, okay, great, let's do this thing. They're like, okay, bap. And then they wake up back at the bar and they have no idea what's going on. So like, what the hell happened? And then I started describing all the stuff that was going on during the day and was things that they remembered happened yesterday. They're like, what is going on? And then the world, and they went through their entire day just fucking around with stuff, exploring. There was a murder mystery, so they were just going about their day, knowing that something weird happened, and they don't know why they woke up again. But we're doing this murder mystery, so let's go dig our way through the murder. And then it was nighttime. They hadn't solved the mystery. They were trying to figure out what's our next steps, and then the world ended, and they woke up back at the bar again. Like, what the fuck just happened? And so it took them a little while. It took them basically 4 levels for them to find out that the world was ending. And that's why they kept resetting. All they knew is that whenever the day, at a certain point at night, the world was, they would loop back around. For some reason, they'd pass out. They'd loop back around, and they wake up back at the bar. So they eventually found out, oh, it's because the world is ending. And we keep waking up inside the same day because those shamans trapped us in a time loop to find a way to stop the world from ending. Every time we fail, the day would start over. Every time they died from combat or stupidity, the whole team would start over. So it's a work sponsored club, so it has to be inclusive, and it has, and like, so you can't have people sitting out and they don't get to play. So we had to build a campaign that allowed people to constantly play. So if anyone died, the entire team got wiped and got pulled back to the beginning of the day again. So the entire combat structure was protect whoever is weakest right now. So as a DM, I could attack different players with different types of traps or puzzles or challenges that would, like, the druid is weak this time. So if they get engaged in combat, protect the druid. The barbarian is burned out all their hit dice for the day, and they're out of rages, and they are really hampered. We could just slit our throats and try again and just try to make sure our tank doesn't get hurt as bad, or we could just try to be really smart and push as far as we can to get whatever information we can get out of this place before we get wiped anyway. So it became a real gamification of, once they got into what the system was doing, they started creating their own little subcultures of how they would make decisions about what's worth pushing on and what's worth dying for. I built the characters to all have short rest resources. Like, the druid wasn't playing a full casting druid. The druid was using the warlock structure, where they'd have pact magic for all their normal stuff, and then they had their daily high level stuff, which worked great, because if all they had was one day, and when they take a long rest, they would wake up back at the beginning of their day again with all their resources back. If they needed more resources, they could take an hour out of their day to get resources back. But that's an hour out of basically 8. They had 18 hours. So if they spent an hour taking a long rest, that's actually a significant decision that they had to make. Is it worth it to us to lose an hour of our day to get more resources because we know we're going to need them? Or can we, or are we just doing fact finding right now, and we can afford to not take any rests today because that extra hour of time is going to give us access to stuff that we might not otherwise have access to if we waste our hour? So these are decisions that they were constantly having to make for themselves. And then there was the challenge of, like, because they were effectively immortal, Groundhog Day, you know? You kill them, they just come back. They could try again. So I could create challenges that were save or die. Very, 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 very much, if you make the wrong move, your character will be killed. And so they would get to places that I wouldn't like. They clever their way into. It was very Metroid Castlevania style of design. In that, if they at one point they were fighting a dragon, a giant crab underwater, and one of the big challenges of it was that if the crab could grab hold of you and you couldn't break free of the grapple in 2 rounds, it would squeeze all the air out of you and you would die. I wasn't using the drowning rules that were in the 30E because I didn't need to keep the characters from dying. I didn't see a lot of 5E is built around the assumption that if your character dies, you have to make a new character. And that's going to unfunify the story that they want your characters to listen to while they pretend that they have a choice. Because 5E isn't... WotC doesn't make adventures for your characters to tear apart and explore. They build amusement rides that you as players sit in your chair and go down the tracks of the railroad of the roller coaster ride through your characters, but you don't really have a lot of agency and decision making. Dungeon of the Mad Mage has a hex crawl through Chult, but the goal of that hex crawl is to get you into the dungeon. It's not they don't have a ton of stuff for you to do. Like, they don't have 20 levels of shit for you to do in the jungles of Chult. They got like 5 levels of stuff for you to do, and they expect you to end up at the Dungeon of the Mad Mage and to play through that, and then that's when you get killed. It's like there's not a lot of fun there because it's not an actual. It's not like Isle of Dread where it's a real open-ended hex crawl campaign where there's stuff happening in each hex and it's your choice what becomes important in there. And it's all in the book. You can play it as is. It's first edition. It's expert original Dungeons and Dragons expert box set. It comes in the box set. Like, this is how you run hex crawls. This is what we intended for you. That doesn't exist in 5e. I could rant more about it, but the point is that I can indiscriminately kill my characters, so I don't need to keep them safe. So I can have drowning rules of as soon as all your air is gone, you're dead. So when this crab latches onto them and squeezes all the air out of them, that becomes a significant threat. So all their combat strategies have to revolve around drawing the crab out of the water so they can use ranged attacks against it, so they can get rid of it, so they could move, then pass through it in the water. And I use gold in this campaign because they had infinite looping. I built it around milestones, and defeating that crab earned them a level, and it took them to 7th level. And so when they defeated the crab and they gained a level, the druid then gained access to the water breathing spell. And they're like, God, this would have been so helpful while we were fighting the crab. It's like, yeah, that's why fighting the crab is now so useful. And then when they got on board with that mentality, when they attacked a problem and they couldn't get past it easily, they're like, there's probably going to be something on the other side of this that's going to trivialize being here. That's going to make being here super easy. And so they would attack problems that way, but that would allow me to make kill houses where if they make the wrong move, they get killed. And it wasn't, oh, this is bullshit. They're like, God damn it, we forgot about the fire trap. And now they had to reset their day and go through the fun house again, and now we need to remember the fire trap, or we need to prep ourselves so we won't take damage from that fire trap. They need to figure out a way around it, eating up their resources and the way that they sequence their actions to be able to move through things. And once they figure out the tricks of it, it's really easy for them to resolve it. But they have to experience the trick and find out what the problem was for them to figure out how to move on. And these fun houses were always blockades to moving to new areas, like Castlevania and Metroid. You have to have the bomb skill in Metroid to be able to blow up the floor to drop down into the next level. Otherwise, you're stuck at this upper level where you have to mess around with stuff. But you get the bomb by defeating the upper level. Now you can drop down to the lower level. So they actually asked me, because they were all brand new to playing D&D, when we were making characters and they had their first level up. I'm like, cool, we can level up characters now. And they all just spontaneously came to the conclusion, you know what, Phil, you've been doing this for a long time. Why don't you make our characters? Why don't you level up our characters the way that you think they should be leveled up. And at the time, they framed it as like, there's so many options, we don't know what's going to be useful. So why don't you just make characters for us and level them up every level, because you're going to know what's probably going to be useful in the campaign. Now that we know now that we know that we're trapped in a time loop, we're not really sure what we're going to need. So why don't you do that? And that was a revelation for me. I had never been asked that by a team before to build a character for them. And that created the Metroid style of gameplay, where I didn't have to give the druid water breathing until I say she gets water breathing. So I created an obstacle that made water breathing fun and worthwhile, and that crab was the pathway to that. So I eventually, I would gatekeep different class features, and I knew it was coming. I knew that she was playing a Circle of Dreams, right? And they have that bonfire ability, where if you set a location to be your set point, you could teleport back to that point, right? Like as part of a short rest, you could teleport to a new location if you made that your spot to go to. Instead, I gave them a ritual that would allow them to create a new, instead of waking up at the bar, they could wake up wherever it is that they performed this bonfire ritual. And that was the class feature that the druid gained. Instead of what the bonfire ability normally was, this became the ability. Oh my god, you mean we can set new anchor points? And we can actually move around the map, and we don't have to wake up drunk at the bar anymore? I'm like, yeah, you have to do an ability check, and if you fail, you'll wake up back at the bar. Okay, that sounds awesome. So then they start doing these bonfire things, but they don't know what the DC is. So they gained this, and I didn't just give them the ritual, I gave them a book 2 levels earlier that had a bunch of secrets in it, and they knew that there were secrets in it. So every time they would spend, let's burn 3 or 4 days to learn the secrets of this book. So they would just spend days, in a montage sequence of a time traveling story, any TV show or movie ends up having a time travel montage of them learning how to do something, right? Well, they would study this book every now and again. So we'd do a book montage, and then they would do basically a lore check to find out what they discovered. It's there's more. You haven't deciphered all of it yet, but here's what you picked up this time. And now you've learned this anchoring ritual. So it's this book, they found this book in this abandoned temple that had connections to the shamanic tribe that brought them into the time loop adventure. So this is like the Dead Sea Scrolls. It has hidden knowledge in it. And so they were picking up these, as they delved further and further into these tablets, and they gained higher levels and could hit higher DC lore checks. I would have a DC 20 would give them access to this ritual. They could, if they could hit a DC 20 on a lore check, they could learn a ritual that would be able to add people to the time loop or remove them from a time loop. So by the time I think it was level 8, they had a ritual that could end the time loop at any time, but they knew that if they ended the time loop, that the end of the world was at the end of the day, and if they weren't in the time loop, they were dead like everyone else, and everything's fucked. So they're okay, well, and so when they realized that, and they blurted out, oh my god, this is what, blah, 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 I'm yeah, you're right. So, for this campaign to end, the campaign ends when you end the time loop, and you decide to see what happens as a result of your actions. They're well, we can't get out of it until we solve the riddle. It's I love you guys. Yeah, exactly. That's the point. You have to, if you think you've solved the apocalypse, you have to end the time loop before the apocalypse happens. And if you're right, it doesn't happen. If you're wrong, the campaign is over. But you laid your bed. Because whenever I build a campaign and the campaign ends, I take at least 1 or 2 pieces from that campaign and add it permanently to my campaign. So they know that the world ends, and the solution that they came up with, they didn't solve it, they delayed it. They know that the apocalypse, they ended up going back in time to when the apocalypse was supposed to happen, which was 5,000 years earlier. They found a way to sustain the world past 5,000 years. 5,000 years later, it's their day. and now they're gonna die, and they have to solve the problem. But they didn't. They didn't solve the problem. They punted it. They just know that what they are going to do now is going to delay the inevitable, but they don't know how long. They just know that they can get through their day. And basically they threw it was basically a bunch of gods that would choose a venue to have a fight, and that venue was whatever reality they were invading. And in this instance, it was the player's reality, and so they over the course of 20 levels, they found ways to trap the gods in these crystals, and then in the end, they ended up flinging the crystal. They basically threw the crystals into a bag of holding, and then threw the bag of holding into a portable hole, losing them in the astral sea forever. But forever is the timeline of the gods, so they will probably eventually find their way out. But it's going to be so far into the future that their home world could suffer heat death from the loss of their sun. It might not actually ever be a problem. So they were content with that. It's like, okay, we'll end the time loop, and they did, and then they woke up the next day, and they it was a new day. So they decided to lay down for a long rest, and they're like, well, we'll either wake up at the bar or we'll still be here. And when they woke up, they were still there. It's like, we did it, and that was the end of the campaign. So now the next campaign, it's the future, and their world is destroyed. This asteroid field that we're designing right now is all the mantle of the planet that the world got destroyed and it detonated, and so there's a very small core of the planet left at the center of the system, and all these asteroids that their characters are mining now is the remnants of the planet. So that's what got kept from the campaign, is that that you saved the world for those characters, but now here at an indeterminate amount of time in the future, you're now playing asteroid miners on a world that got shattered somehow. It got destroyed, and they don't know how. But that's not relevant to this campaign, but the players know that this is the remnants of the world that was left behind from the destruction of the world. So they get to carry that with them as players. And as they go into every new campaign, they get to find, like, how did we change the world? What's different about this world that they can see as Easter eggs? And they just get it up front in this one. It's like, yeah, the world's destroyed. And so the reason why they have all these people in space mining these resources is because there's no planet to go back to. We have to gather resources so that we can build in space. It's the only place we have. It's just that the apocalypse got delayed to a point where they would be able to, they had the technology to survive it. So they had to flee the planet and watch it be destroyed. And it's like, well, fuck, what are we going to do now? So they go back to the remnants of the planet and they start putting life back together again. And then a couple generations later, this is where we're at now. So this campaign is the result of the decisions that their last characters made. And they just get, normally there's a time delay. Like all the Warforged are sentient. They know who they were. They knew they were somebody else, and that they are basically souls trapped inside of a fake body. 2 campaigns ago, the adventure was about awakening all the Warforged and bringing them back to consciousness, so that they could make decisions for themselves and not be slaves to war anymore. They could forge their own path, as it were. And so now in this campaign, they have the option of playing Warforged characters, and all of them know that they used to be somebody, but now this is all they have. But they're really important because they don't have to breathe, so they can survive in space perpetually. It's like this is actually an amazing gift to us as a species. It's, if we weren't in these synthetic shells living as these AI creatures, we probably would be dead now. So at least we get to sustain ourselves, and now we can start calling the shots in reality, because everyone else that has to breathe is at disadvantage against us. So there's like this meta concept going on between the Warforged being superior creatures in space versus all these air breathers. They can just pop your bubble if they want to and kill you. So like Warforged have real power now, and you have to respect them. Anyway, yeah. Yeah, pretty funny. But this is what happens when you build a stable table of players that are able to stick around for a long term. You have to actively cultivate a culture at your table of longevity. Like, you hire people, you recruit them in because they're willing to stick around, and that becomes your core team. And then as you pick up new people and others just naturally fall away over time, you train them to become your core, so they'll show up every week and become part of the mission of, the mission isn't playing D&D. The mission is to play D&D through a 20-level campaign. And if you're on board for that, like, if you build your table with the specific goal of running 20-level campaigns, the DM becomes a really proficient DM over time. And the players get to be in that upper crust, that upper less than 1% of people that have actually ran a campaign from level 1 to 20. My table had never played D&D before. They all played WoW together out of work. And so they all worked together, and then they'd play WoW together after work, and then they caught wind that I played D&D. And they were Critical Role fans. They'd listen to Critical Role while playing WoW. So they're like, we're interested in D&D. Critical Role's cool. And it's like, well, I gave you all the Critical Role caveats of blah, 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 and differences. And I'm like, no, that's cool. We'll do it your way, whatever you want. And so we did our session 0, and that's how we created the parameters of no one gets to die. And they wanted the only 2 rules that they had was they wanted a full 1 to 20 campaign. So this is going to take 200 hours. So that's like a 5-year game plan. It's like we had all been at this job for over 10 years already. It was like, yeah, we're not going anywhere. So we're in. And this is actually gives us a reason to show up on Wednesdays, because Wednesdays are bullshit days. So this is actually really motivating. So let's do it. And the other rule that they had is that they wanted to play a 20-level campaign, and they wanted to play the same characters through the entire 20 levels. It's like, that's unheard of in D&D. Like, you don't promise to get to play characters, but that's what they wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, let's figure it out. And I did. And so this time loop campaign is the solution that I came up with. And I had and I didn't tell them what it was. I was just like, okay, here's the rules that you set out for me. I have built a campaign that will accommodate that. But I didn't, and I specifically said, I'm not going to give you any details about it. I'm just going to throw you into it. Just trust me. And they're like, okay. And then I threw them into it, and when they figured it out, like, wow, you did it. I'm like, yeah, now we can play a full 20-level campaign, and your characters will never die. But they died. Sometimes they would die dozens of times in an hour because they were trying to figure a thing out. Or they're like, yeah, we're specifically going to loop our characters because we want to learn the routine. Like they wanted to break into a castle at one point. It's like, we're going to spend like 30 days looping the same 30 days so we can figure out the routine of the guards that are patrolling this castle. And we're going to convert that into like advantages. And then I started handing out inspiration points every day. And so they'd stock up their inspiration points. So they'd have like 20 inspiration points in a pile. It's like, we're going to get through this castle. And every time we run into a problem with a bad die roll, we'd throw an inspiration point at it so we could re-roll it. And they would re-roll over and over and over again until they hit the number that they wanted. And sometimes, but I wouldn't tell them the DC. So they'd have to guess it. And like sometimes they'd have to loop a day just because they rolled a 24, but they needed a 25. Like, fuck! So they'd keep re-rolling to get the numbers that they would need. And those inspiration die represented them learning the routine by looping over and over again. So the inspiration points became time loops. So they'd spend time loop points to cash a day. So like they would like leverage. They would basically backstory. It's like, yeah, we looped 20 days. So I have this point of inspiration. So I'm going to spend this point, and I now know that if I'm going to do the stealth check, I'm going to have to roll at least a 25 on my stealth check. And the narrative behind that is I failed so many times that I eventually just get it right by spending my inspiration time loop points over and over again to re-roll my die. And so that became a really common factor in the game of they would get a number of they would get 2 points a day. Every session they get 2 points. And they could hold a number of points equal to their proficiency bonus. So at 20th level, they could each hold 6 inspiration points. And they would stock up a month of game, 4 sessions, to get, well, it only took 3 sessions for them to get up to 6 points. But when they got to 6 points, they would tear into something. They would research, explore, fuck around. And as soon as they'd hit their max total, they would dive into the thing that they were fucking around with. It's like, we now have 24 points between the 4 of us to be able to attack this problem. We're gonna get it. And more likely than not, they would. But they planned and strategized around it and had a very lengthy time period of them figuring out what they needed and gathering the resources that they needed. Sometimes they would like research a spell. They had access to a library. So they'd wake up, they'd go to the library, and they'd read all day. And they get through that book, they loop, they go back to the next book, and over time they could research a ritual that they needed to be able to get through a wall, for instance. So I would have parameters about what they could and couldn't do, and like what they could learn and what they couldn't, blah, blah, blah. Where is it? 7:45? Okay. So I'm on my last 20-minute circuit now. And I can see that I've been monologuing, and so I haven't gotten done nearly the stuff that I wanted to get done here, because when I start talking about stuff, I tend to zoom in and start to micromanage my pixels. So this has been a fun rant day, but it hasn't been a very productive day. So, for shame, Phil, for shame. But I've had a lot of fun talking with you guys, so thanks for letting me rant. But we are getting close to the end. So this is a Thursday, which means I'm going to be on tonight. I'm going to be doing Eberron stock art, the Eberron adventure that I've been building here on stream. I've still got a couple maps to make. We still have about 16. We still have 16 monster tokens to make, and then we get to start making all the NPC tokens, like the villains and the allies that you can have in the adventure. So we're gonna work on that tonight, and I'll be on in about probably like 11.5 hours. I typically log on. It's 7:45 here in Seattle, and I'm typically on somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock and stream for anywhere from like around 100 minutes, basically. But as soon as the Spelljammer project is done, that Eberron adventure becomes my morning project, and then I'll have my Monday, Thursday night. I'll have the ability to like work on I've got a number of other projects, obviously, that I'm working on. But eventually we're going to be building, not too far in the future, we're going to start building additional Spelljammer supplements. And once we clear our plate of other tasks, I'll have a little bit of bandwidth in the evening or on the weekend to start building like the Mecha book or the Kaiju book or the Living Ship Sidekick book or the Vocath Death Crab. All these different ideas that I've put out as things that I can do, I'll actually be able to do. Don't you love how these little egg things on its back just lit up by adding the background swirl? I love this little lighting effect in the corner here. Absolutely love that. Absolutely love this. I love breaking frame like this. I just think it's clever. I pat myself on the back when I do things like this because I congratulate myself for being so clever. But when I do it well, it's really cool. Like, it actually is clever. So I can go ahead and pat myself on the back. I earned that. But it actually has to work. So it's fun building these things out properly. See, I'm talking less because I'm trying to get stuff done. It's a curse, man. Talking and bullshitting on stream is... I'm still learning how to be productive while yucking it up. But this is very much an example of it's about the journey There's definitely a destination worth having, which is the book. But the joy that I get out of all of it is talking shop and bullshitting and stuff. It's just fun. It's just fun. I'm hoping in 2025 I can start doing Kickstarters, or that is to say, I hope by 2025 I have enough of an audience that if I make a Kickstarter, folks will have enough interest in the stuff and the ideas that I do that they'll back it because they have faith that I'll be able to actually produce something that's worth their time having, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to start streaming in the first place, because like this is episode 313, is that right? Yeah, we're at episode 313 of building this 100-page book. And we're at episode 190-something in Eberron for what will also be probably about a 100-page adventure. And I've been building, and I'm like at episode 110 now of the Martial Powers book, which we've built pretty much from scratch here on stream. And that I'll also, once it's done playtesting, I'll also be doing all the illustrations for the Martial Powers book and publish it online as well and bundle it with the other 5 color mana books that I have. So like all the stuff that I do here, I'm trying to be incredibly transparent and methodical about what I'm doing, how I'm presenting it, all with the intention of, if you think these things are cool, wait until I start doing Kickstarters. Because once I start doing Kickstarters, we can literally build the entire thing here, and hopefully people that show up are people that are backing the Kickstarter, so like they can have access to all the content and the playtesting and help me run through it, and then we can literally talk about what we experienced in the playtesting here on stream while I'm building the fucking book. Like that just seems like such a fun thing to do, but I haven't earned it yet because I haven't earned enough support and respect from people that would be willing to back it. I still have to, like everything else about a man, you have to prove fucking everything about yourself. Like I am worth nothing unless my ideas inspire you. So everything that I'm doing here is with the hope and intention of earning your respect and your faith in the work that I do, because hopefully I inspire you. The artwork that I make can curve into the aesthetics and the visuals that we want for the things that we make to inspire you to visualize what your game is going to be, and the mechanics and the framing of the different adventures and rule sets that we build are designed to inspire you to build games in different ways and have new opportunities for your players. And so hopefully it all cashes out. Well, I found your channel 3 days ago and I feel very inspired. Well, badass. Thanks, Polar. Really appreciate that. It's if that's the case with enough people, then I will eventually earn a place where I can just do this, like for a living. I live in Seattle, and the minimum income for living in Seattle on your own is basically $80,000 a year. So I'm going to have to be a pretty fucking successful Kickstarter to be able to quit my day job. But luckily, I can just, work this as a side hustle for however long God allows me to stay on the planet. I can keep doing this shit, and if it builds to in momentum to a point where I can quit my day job, that just means I get to do this more. I can run 2 or 3 games a week and still have the capacity to do this like 6 hours a day instead of 2 hours on stream. So I can really build a production studio live on stream with you guys to hash our way through all this shit. And maybe I can even like hire some staff to build, like have a weekly zine that leans into the concepts that we build here. It's like ongoing content production, and that's a Patreon thing that needs to build momentum. So I have a Patreon. It's linked down below. There's not a lot to it, just some casual voting now and again. But I'm hoping to as I lean more into stock art, I can start selling my stock art there, and just start publishing more stuff there. I'm still trying to figure out how to balance production and creation and actually running the game and being a DM. It's a lot. There's a lot to it, so it's going to take a long time to build, but I gave up on get rich quick a long time ago, and I know that if it's worth it, it's going to take time, it's going to take patience, and if it's supposed to be, it will come into existence, and it will be fun to do. If I'm not having fun with it, then I'm not in the right place at the right time. Luckily for me, all this shit is super fucking fun. So obviously this is where I'm supposed to be. I'm 50, man. I'm 50, and I look, well, I've definitely got gray hair. But luckily I'm keeping all the hair on my head. We'll see how quickly that gets taken away now that I've brought it up. But when I paint, I feel like time stops, and I think that that's showing in my health. So, like people that are really rich have the luxury of just doing what they want to do when they get there, when they reach the end. I mean, they have to bust their ass to get there, but when they get there, they have the ability to actually enjoy what they've produced, which is why rich people look so happy and young and healthy because they don't have any emotional drag on them, because they've, I mean, obviously people have stress and shit like that, so don't grind me down with the specifics and the gotchas. But when you're living your dream and you have the ability to pursue your goals, the actual definition, a functioning definition of wealthy and prosperous is being able to do what you want to do when you want to do it. And what I want to do right now is paint. And I know that I'm still beholden to my day job, and I respect that, but that is a cocoon that I get to evolve out of and break free from, and eventually I will evolve into a place where I am creating enough content that I can actually potentially hire and help other people achieve their dreams as well. And that, I think that is inspiring, and that is a dream worth pursuing. So we'll see. We'll see what the fates have in store for me. But so far, my muse has been an invaluable sidekick, and I don't give her enough credit. So thank you, angels, for loving me so much. I can feel it. If you can't tell, Xanadu, the Olivia Newton-John movie, influenced my world philosophy a lot. My sister and I watched that movie when we were 3 years old, and she bought the record, and we listened to it constantly. And it was on HBO. HBO was new, and it had Xanadu, and we would watch it twice a day. But to my young, impressionable mind, to me, this was telling me something true about the universe, that there are things out there that look over us and want to inspire us to greatness. And what do you know? 45 years later, I feel like there's things that are guiding me to make decisions. And when I turn off my brain and I let the ink flow, I feel like there's just something else that already knows what this stuff looks like. And all she has to do is just carve it out of reality onto the canvas. But I've talked about that a lot, about the ability of athletes and artists to turn off their mind and to let the art flow or the sport move. And it becomes an inspired instinct that you're not really making decisions, you're just letting the body act. And to me, I can feel that wholeness, that touching heaven, and to me, that's what that entity that knows how to pilot my body and to make those instinctive decisions that I can't calculate, that allows me to draw a perfect circle. Like, that's not me. That's something. There's something piloting me, and I can feel it, and it's reassuring. It feels like God's hand on my shoulder. It's amazing. But I mean, you can choose to believe that or not. But if you aren't an athlete or an artist that's really like I've got 15,000 hours of art production. Like that 10,000 hours of mastery, I believe it because I've experienced it. And you see it a lot in like really good artists. I'm not saying I'm like a really good artist, but I can touch, I can feel like what really, like Most Piata, for instance, or not Most. I'm sorry. What's his name? Mobius, the French comic artist. He could do an entire page of art and just starts and just fills it in. And it's flawless. Flawless ink work, no pencils, just ink from blank page to full inked page. No flaws, doesn't stop, just flows the entire page. That guy is walking with God. You can't have that level of disassociation and perfect production without being piloted somehow. And I've been at this long enough now that I can sense what that is. And anyone else that dedicates themselves to a craft or a sport or an art or a performance long enough knows what that flow state is. They call it flow state. We know what it is. But you have to train your body in a specific art or sport or performance action to get there. Which is why martial artists are called martial artists, because they've trained their body in combat so well that their body instinctively knows what it needs to do, not necessarily to defeat somebody, but just to survive. And sometimes violence is what is required for survival, but they are training constantly in decision making in survival. What do I need to do to walk out of this day alive? What do I need to do to get back to my family? Those are high-end performance soldiers. But it's the same flow state. Most people never have the opportunity to fall in love with something so much that they can experience that flow state. But it's love. It really is. It's a sense of love. It's love in motion. It's a devotion. It's I am performing these tasks for this thing that I adore. And in me, it's creating ideas. Yes, God, Mobius is so fucking good. He used to do stories in Heavy Metal magazine, and like anyone else that grew up in the 80s and 90s, I was a heavy metal junkie. And God, when he'd put his stuff in the comics, it was an immediate buy. It's like, God, yes, give me more Mobius. Give me that shit. There we go. And it's, oh shit, I'm late. I've got a minute left. It's 8:03. I have to go. Have you seen the art of A. Shipwright? Some things does entire. Oh yeah, nice. No, I'm not familiar with them. But nice. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut that there. I'm pretty happy with it. I might put some dark splotch over here, but that's today. And when we come back tomorrow, we have this page to do. Same thing. We're just going to do the color splash across there. And then this back page, we're going to put a little color splotch down here. So, and then that'll finish off this chapter. So if I can stay on target and not ramble too hard, I should be able to finish up this chapter tomorrow, and then we'll just keep moving forward. So that was today. Guys, thanks a lot for hanging out with me. Anyone else that catches this in the future, I'm here 6 days a week. I would love to have you take a look at what we're doing here. I'll be back tonight. This is a Thursday here in real time. So I'll be back in probably in about 11 and a half hours, maybe 12, depending on how my day plays out after work. I'll be back on and we'll do 100 minutes or so of token art, kind of like this stuff, just creature art for the Ebron adventure. So thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate you letting me ramble at you. And thanks for showing up and taking interest in this shit. I'm really looking forward to having this published for folks to play with. So I'll see everyone on the other side. Take care.